Christopher Watts of Frederick, Colorado has been sentenced for the murders of his wife, Shanann Watts, aged 34, his daughters Bella, aged 4, Celeste, aged 3, and the murder of their unborn son, Nico. At the packed-out Weld County Court, members of Shanann's family and Watts' parents each read out victim impact statements in front of the defendant. Shanann's father, Frank Rutkusik, was the first to speak. He called Watts a monster and his emotional state was clearly visible. A heartbroken man who will never see his daughter and grandchildren again because of the man who vowed to love and cherish his daughter.
This is the heartless one, the evil monster. Who dare you take the lives of my daughters Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico? I trusted you to take care of them, not kill them. And they also trusted you. The heartless monster, and then you take them out like trash. You disgust me. They were loving and caring people.
Frank Rutkusik Jr., Shanann's brother, bravely held back his tears as District Attorney Michael Rourke read his statement. He made it clear that his life will never be the same for Watts's actions.
What gave you the right to put your hands on a woman, let alone my best friend, my beloved sister, your daughters, and your son? Why weren't they enough for you?
Shanann's mother thanked the judge for the opportunity to speak. She praised Shannon's neighbors and the Frederick community for their support. Bravely, she told the court that she was unable to make the decision for the death penalty as she felt it wrong to take a life despite Watts taking 4 lives that day.
I wanted to say thank you for this moment. I want to take a moment to thank everyone who has prayed for our beloved family, who has sent gifts, cards to us from all over the world. I know God will put the evil people where they need to be. I didn't want death for you because that's not my right. Your life is between you and God now, and I pray that He has mercy for you. From Shannon's mother, Bella Marie, Celeste Catherine, and Nico Lee's, Nana. Thank you, Your Honor.
With the support of legal counsel, Ronnie and Cindy Watts confronted the courtroom. The legal counsel spoke to clarify that their statements made to the press earlier that week were done without proper knowledge of the case and they both accept Watts is guilty. Cindy took to the stand and turned to her son and said she forgave him. Watts was visibly shaken by his mother's statements, even shedding a tear.
The information that my clients had at the time that they were interviewed was not correct. They were misinformed, that they accept that their son has done this, that they accept that he chose to plead guilty. We would strongly encourage Christopher Watts to give that full confession in the tone and in the timing that he thinks is appropriate with the guidance of his counsel.
I am still struggling to understand how and why this tragedy occurred. Love you. And we forgive you, son.
I am the father of Christopher Watts as well.
But it was the district attorney for the case, Michael Rourke's speech that clarified the severity of the case.
The defendant strangled her to death with his own hands.
Until this point, all evidence regarding the case had been withheld from the public forum because a trial was likely. That was until Watts suddenly changed his plea to guilty. When a person is suspected of murder, the investigators can gain access to phone records extremely quickly. Due to law changes, the short-term records are accessible. This information is most likely the basis of Watts' charges. The records also reveal the extent of his affair with co-worker Nicole Kessinger. He was searching for locations to take Kessinger, along with searches for jewelry. Whilst Shanann was trying her hardest to communicate ways to save the marriage.
While Shanann texted the defendant over and over again in the days and weeks leading up to her death, attempting to save her marriage, the defendant secreted pictures of his girlfriend into his phone and searched and texted her at all hours of the night. And while Shanann took the girls to visit family in North Carolina, the defendant went to car museums and the sand dunes with his new girlfriend.
Most chillingly, the day after the murders, Watts contacted Bella and Celeste's school to unenroll them and contacted a realtor regarding selling the house. Despite Watts' pleas that Shanann had strangled the girls, the evidence pointed clearly to intent, motive, and murder. Shanann's death was a result of strangulation. Rook emphasizes that her hyphoid bone was not broken. In violent strangulations, the hyphoid bone is usually how medical examiners can determine strangulation as cause of death, but with Shanann's being intact, this proves Watts strangled her slowly.
You would expect to see some kind of defensive wounds on his body as she struggled and fought for her own life. The only injuries that were on Shanann's body were one set of finger or bruising, what appeared to be fingernail or finger mark bruising to the right side of her neck. The horror that she felt as the man that she loved wrapped his hands around her throat and choked the life out of her must have been unimaginable.
Shanann was unable to fight back. Recall the testimony of Shanann's friend who told police Shanann was unwell prior to her return home. No doubt, being weakened physically made Shanann's murder even more brutal.
We know that he slowly took her life the morning of August 13th. We know that this was not done in an uncontrolled, vengeful manner that he tried to describe to agents from CBI and the FBI.
As I previously surmised that both Bella and Celeste were smothered and not strangled, this horrific method of murder is common in familicide. A father could murder his wife cold-heartedly but couldn't face watching his children die by his hand. Bella's autopsy reveals that she had bitten her tongue and inside of her mouth. This tells the medical examiner she was conscious at the time. It also disproves Watts' claim the girls were strangled by Shanann when in fact they were smothered by him.
The man seated to my right smothered his daughters. Your Honor, understand very clearly, Bella fought back for her life. The frenulum, the connective tissue between her upper lip and her gum, had a centimeter and a half laceration. She bit her tongue multiple times.
The deposition of the bodies is just about as horrific as it can get. The evidence shows Watts forced the children's bodies into a hole with an 8-inch diameter. Bella's body suffered scrapes from the force of being pushed into an oil tank.
Bella and Celeste were thrown away in the oil tanks at this facility.
There were tufts of hair around the entry hole from Celeste's hair. Watts even told investigators he could determine how full the tanks were of crude oil by the splashes from the bodies falling.
The defendant told investigators that Bella's tank seemed emptier than CC's because of the sound that the splashes made.
Shanann's body was buried in a shallow grave on the site. All the family, as Rourke points out, were disposed of separately like garbage. Rourke reveals that Watts had messaged a co-worker the night before the murders to arrange going to the work site himself, the same site he would dump the bodies.
He had texted a co-worker the night before saying, "I'll head out to that site. I'll take care of it."
Leaving one question unanswered. Why?
How could a seemingly normal husband and father annihilate his entire family?
Every ounce of evidence points to Watts premeditating the murder of his family to make way for a new relationship, but according to Kessinger they made no long-term plans. In Rourke's statement he is suggesting the relationship was more developed than Nicole Kessinger stated. The evidence shows that Shanann knew there were problems in their relationship, even confiding in a friend that she suspected Watts was having an affair. But the method of murder was personal, suggesting that he didn't want his family to exist without him and that no one else would have them either. Did Shanann find out he was cheating that night or confront him?
What he referred to as an emotional conversation. about the state of their marriage and about what their lives would look like going forward.
No matter what explanation Watts could give, it will never justify his actions from that moment or beyond. Watts will never see freedom again. He was sentenced to 4 life sentences, and 36 years in total for the unlawful disposal of the bodies. Should Watts have faced the death penalty, or is life imprisonment justified for his crimes?